For over a century, the Titanic has rested silently in the dark, frozen depths of the Atlantic. But even after endless expeditions, countless documentaries, and decades of research, there are still mysteries that remain unsolved. What secrets lie beneath those crushing waters? What truths have been hidden all this time? Today, we are diving deep to uncover the untold stories and strange secrets lurking beneath the wreck of the Titanic. The Titanic, once called the unsinkable ship, met its tragic fate on April 15, 1912. More than 1,500 lives were lost. And what remains is not just a historical tragedy, but a mystery-filled resting place at the bottom of the ocean. From bizarre discoveries and conspiracy theories to unexplained artifacts and strange sea life surrounding the wreck, the Titanic wreck site continues to puzzle experts and explorers. In this video, we're taking you through the most fascinating mysteries of the Titanic's hidden depths. When the Titanic slipped beneath the freezing waters of the North Atlantic on April 15, 1912, it took with it over 1,500 lives and countless unanswered questions. But as years turned into decades and expeditions finally reached the wreck site deep beneath the ocean's surface, a strange mystery began to emerge. Among the twisted metal, scattered belongings, and haunting remains of the once unsinkable ship, something seemed oddly out of place. Some of the Titanic's lifeboats, those critical vessels that had carried survivors to safety, were nowhere to be found. For historians and explorers, this was more than just a curiosity. It hinted at a deeper, more puzzling question. What happened to those lifeboats after that fateful night? And why does their absence continue to raise so many eyebrows today? To understand the mystery, we need to go back to that cold April night. The Titanic carried a total of 20 lifeboats, far fewer than what was needed for all passengers on board. It was a fatal oversight born out of arrogance and a misplaced belief in the ship's invincibility. After the iceberg ripped through the Titanic's hull, chaos erupted on deck as passengers scrambled for seats in the lifeboats. Some were launched half-empty in the confusion, while others were swarmed to capacity. As the massive vessel groaned and tilted into its watery grave, survivors floated away in these small wooden boats, clinging to life as the cries of those left behind echoed across the Atlantic. When rescue ships arrived hours later, they found some lifeboats adrift and gathered them up. Yet here's where things get strange. Not every lifeboat was accounted for. Official records noted their numbers and positions, but when later expeditions explored the wreck, certain lifeboats that should have sunk or remained nearby were gone. It was as if they had vanished from history entirely. The first theory was simple. Ocean currents may have carried them far away, perhaps to remote areas where they eventually sank or disintegrated. What doesn't last forever in the harsh sea, after all. But here is the twist: at least a few lifeboats were built with durable materials and were expected to last much longer. Some survivors even reported seeing lifeboats drifting off into the distance, never to be recovered. Could these boats have reached land or passing ships? If so, what became of the people in them? One particularly eerie story involves Lifeboat No. 1, nicknamed the Money Boat. It left the Titanic with only 12 people aboard, despite having room for 40. Among them were first-class passengers, including the controversial Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon, who was accused, though never proven, of bribing the crew not to return for more survivors. That lifeboat was eventually found, but its mystery stirred rumors that some lifeboats might have carried people who did and want to be found or questioned later. Did others escape unnoticed, drifting into obscurity with secrets we may never uncover? Decades later, when underwater cameras finally revealed the Titanic's resting place in 1985, search teams scoured the debris field for clues. They found pieces of the ship scattered over miles, personal belongings frozen in time, even shoes eerily lined up on the ocean floor. But entire lifeboats, the very vessels of survival, were mostly absent. A few fragments turned up here and there, but large sections were conspicuously missing. It was almost as if someone or something had removed them long before explorers ever arrived. Some researchers suggest that scavengers in the years after the sinking may have recovered lifeboats drifting on the surface and dismantled them for materials. After all, wood was valuable, and in remote corners of the Atlantic, a stray lifeboat might have been a gift from the sea. Others point to secretive naval activity during World War I and World War II, when the North Atlantic became a graveyard of ships. Could military forces have stumbled upon abandoned Titanic lifeboats and destroyed or repurposed them without realizing their historical significance? But then there's the strangest theory of all, the idea that at least one lifeboat made it to land in an uninhabited or sparsely populated area, its occupants disappearing from history either by choice or by tragic circumstance. Imagine surviving the greatest maritime disaster of the century, only to vanish without a trace. No records, no burials, no answers. Just an empty lifeboat washing ashore somewhere, carrying secrets that no one would ever hear. When people talk about the Titanic disaster, they always mention one thing: the iceberg. That massive wall of ice, looming out of the darkness on April 14, 1912, became the ultimate villain in this tragic story. We've seen it in movies, documentaries, and history books, described again and again as the sole cause of the sinking. But what if the iceberg wasn't the only thing responsible? What if there was more to the damage than what the world was told? Over the years, as divers and submersibles explored the wreck at the bottom of the Atlantic, experts noticed something odd. Some of the structural damage didn't quite match what you'd expect from a single glancing blow with an iceberg. The Titanic didn't hit the iceberg head-on. It scraped along its side, opening gashes below the waterline. Yet parts of the ship appear twisted, bent, or collapsed in ways that suggest more complex forces were at work. Could there have been hidden weaknesses or additional impacts that night? Things the official story never fully explained? Survivor testimonies add fuel to this mystery. Some passengers swore they felt multiple jolts, as though the ship struck more than one object. Others claimed they heard strange noises coming from deep within the ship before the collision even happened. Creaks, groans, and metallic bangs that made some uneasy long before the iceberg appeared. Were these just the normal sounds of a massive steel vessel at sea, or early warnings of a disaster waiting to happen? Then there's the controversial fire theory. In recent years, researchers have uncovered evidence suggesting a massive coal fire may have been burning in one of the Titanic's bunkers even before it left Southampton. Photographs taken before the maiden voyage appear to show dark streaks along the hull, possibly scorch marks. If true, this fire could have weakened the ship's steel plates in critical areas, making them far more vulnerable when the iceberg struck. Imagine a giant ocean liner already crippled from within, carrying thousands of souls across the Atlantic with a ticking time bomb smoldering in its belly. But even that doesn't explain everything explorers have found on the ocean floor. Some sections of the wreckage look almost as if they were torn apart by internal forces, as though something inside the Titanic gave way catastrophically after the initial collision. Could boilers exploding from extreme pressure have caused additional destruction as the ship sank? Historical records confirm that at least one of the Titanic's massive boilers did explode underwater, sending shockwaves through the sinking vessel. Those forces might have ripped apart bulkheads and decks, creating damage later mistaken for the iceberg's handiwork. What's even stranger is the shape of the debris field itself. When the wreck was discovered in 1985, search teams expected to find the ship in one large piece, maybe two. Instead, the Titanic had broken apart, with its bow and stern resting far apart on the seabed and countless fragments scattered over miles. The stern section, in particular, was shredded almost beyond recognition, twisted metal jutting out like the skeleton of some colossal beast. While part of this came from the sheer force of hitting the ocean floor 2 miles down, some experts argue that the ship's breakup began long before it reached the bottom. If true, what exactly caused such violent destruction on the way down? One theory suggests that design flaws in the Titanic's construction played a hidden role. Rivets used in the ship's hull may have been made from lower quality iron in some sections, snapping more easily under stress. If the iceberg struck near one of these weaker areas, the damage, what lives down there? It's not impossible that entirely new species lurk near the wreck, feeding off the unique environment it has created over the last century. What fascinates researchers is how the Titanic has become an artificial reef. In the barren deep sea, where food is scarce and the terrain monotonous, A structure as large as the Titanic offers shelter, nutrients, and breeding grounds for countless organisms. Tube worms, starfish, and even deep-sea corals have been found attached to the wreck, transforming it into an oasis of life in a desert of darkness. Yet this transformation raises strange questions. Would these ecosystems even exist if not for the tragedy of 1912? And what will happen to them as the wreck continues to collapse, eaten away by the very microbes and creatures that now call it home? Some scientists argue that studying these organisms might hold the key to future medical breakthroughs. The rust-eating bacteria, for instance, can survive in extreme conditions lethal to most life on Earth. Understanding their biology could lead to new ways of fighting disease or developing materials resistant to corrosion. Others believe these organisms offer clues about how life might exist on other planets, in equally harsh and lightless environments far beyond Earth. But for the explorers who first encountered them, the experience was less about science and more about awe. Imagine piloting a submersible down through miles of freezing black water, beams of light cutting through darkness older than human history, and then suddenly seeing living creatures swirling around the remains of the world's most famous shipwreck. It blurs the line between past and present, between history and nature, between tragedy and the relentless force of life finding a way even in the most unexpected places. When the Titanic was discovered in 1985, the world was prepared to see devastation. After all, this was the most famous shipwreck in history, a tragedy that had lived in our collective memory for more than 7 decades. Explorers expected twisted metal, shattered decks, and scattered belongings, and they found all of that. But as they mapped the wreck site more carefully, they realized something strange. Large portions of the Titanic seemed to be missing entirely. The ship had broken in two as it sank, its massive bow and stern sections now lying over 2,000 feet apart on the ocean floor. The bow, buried deep in the mud, was surprisingly intact considering the violence of its descent. The stern, on the other hand, was a chaotic tangle of steel, almost unrecognizable, crushed by pressure and torn apart by internal explosions as it filled with water. But even accounting for the breakup, there were entire sections of the ship that weren't where they should have been. Deck houses, walls, lifeboat davits, even whole chunks of the upper decks were simply gone. At first, researchers assumed these missing pieces had been scattered far beyond the initial search area. After all, the Titanic sank in one of the most remote parts of the Atlantic, and the ocean floor is vast. Currents could have dragged lighter debris miles away before it settled. But as expeditions widened their search zones over the years, using advanced sonar and deep-sea submersibles, they expected at least some of those missing parts to turn up. Many never did. It was as if parts of the Titanic had simply vanished into the deep. This mystery has fueled endless theories. Some scientists believe that certain sections may be buried deep under layers of silt and mud, invisible even to high-tech scanners. The seafloor in this region isn't flat. It has ridges, trenches, and soft sediments that could easily swallow entire walls or decks over time. If that's true, then the Titanic's missing pieces might still be down there, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the day technology advances enough to uncover them. But other experts point to how violently the ship broke apart. As the Titanic sank, the stern rose high out of the water before snapping free from the bow, plunging down with enormous force. Along the way, it likely shed huge amounts of structure decks collapsing, bulkheads crumpling, funnels ripping, loose all scattering over a wide area. Some of those pieces may have disintegrated on impact, especially wooden sections, leaving behind only fragments too small to easily identify. The sheer chaos of the sinking could explain why so much seems unaccounted for. Then there are the more unsettling possibilities. Some historians have quietly wondered whether early salvage efforts, long before the wreck was officially discovered, might have disturbed the site. There are rumors, never proven, that private expeditions may have reached the Titanic years earlier than reported, taking artifacts or even entire sections without announcing their finds to the world. If that happened, it might explain why certain pieces aren't where they should be. But of course, no solid evidence has ever confirmed such claims. Another theory looks at natural forces. Over the decades, the Titanic has been slowly collapsing under its own weight, weakened by rust-eating bacteria and the immense pressure of the deep. Entire decks have folded in on themselves since the first photos were taken in 1985. It's possible that some of the missing sections simply crumbled into unrecognizable debris piles, blending into the seafloor so thoroughly that we no longer see them as distinct pieces of the ship. Each year, new expeditions record more decay, suggesting that the Titanic we see today is only a shadow of what explorers first encountered nearly 40 years ago. And yet, some discoveries make the mystery even deeper. On several missions, divers found isolated pieces miles from the main wreck site sections of hull plating, parts of the superstructure, even machinery lying far beyond where currents alone should have carried them. How did they get there? Did they break free during the sinking? Or did something happen after the ship was already on the bottom, scattering wreckage across a wider area than anyone expected? Perhaps the strangest question of all involves the missing stern deckhouse, a massive structure that should have left behind obvious debris. To this day, no one knows exactly where it went. Was it destroyed on impact, or does it lie buried, perfectly preserved, somewhere beyond the edges of the known debris field? The idea that entire sections of the Titanic could be hidden just out of sight keeps explorers returning year after year, scanning further, digging deeper, hoping the ocean will finally give up the rest of its secrets deep within the Titanic, behind heavy steel doors and down long, narrow corridors. There were rooms few passengers ever saw. Strong rooms. They were called at the time what we'd now call safes or vaults. These secure compartments were designed to protect the wealth and valuables of the world's richest travelers, the elite who had brought with them gold, cash, jewelry, even important documents on the maiden voyage of what was supposed to be the most luxurious and safest ship ever built. When the Titanic sank, those rooms went down with it, sealed tight, carrying unknown treasures to the bottom of the Atlantic. And ever since the wreck was discovered, people have wondered, what secrets are still locked inside those safe rooms? Historians know for a fact that the Titanic carried massive wealth. Some of the richest men in the world were on board. Business tycoons, bankers, industrialists, and many traveled with valuables that today would be priceless. Records from White Star Line mention cash shipments, precious gems, rare books, and at least one rumored painting believed to be worth a fortune. Gold bullion was said to be stored in the ship's cargo hold, along with mail bags carrying letters, legal papers, and financial documents destined for New York. When the ship went down, so did this treasure trove. Some of it has been recovered over the years, but many sealed compartments have never been fully explored. When Robert Ballard and his team found the Titanic in 1985, the focus was on mapping the wreck, photographing it, and preserving the site as a piece of history rather than disturbing it. The safe rooms remained sealed, untouched by human hands for over 70 years. Later expeditions sent robotic submersibles into parts of the wreck, retrieving artifacts like jewelry, watches, and personal items from passengers, but the deep interiors, the vaults buried within the ship's hull, remained elusive. Some of these areas are incredibly dangerous to access. The Titanic has been collapsing for decades, its decks caving in under pressure, its corridors twisted and blocked by debris. Venturing deep inside risks getting trapped or destroying fragile parts of the ship forever. Still, curiosity has driven countless attempts. One of the most famous recoveries happened in 1987 when a safe was finally brought to the surface. It had been found inside a purser's office, carefully cut free by remotely operated vehicles. When it was opened on live television, people expected gold bars or priceless jewels. Instead, they found documents, letters, banknotes, personal papers, fragile but remarkably preserved after decades underwater. Some were mundane, others heartbreakingly personal, offering glimpses into the lives of passengers who never made it home. It was a reminder that the Titanic's greatest treasures might not be gold or gems at all, but stories sealed away in the dark. And yet many compartments remain unopened to this day. Deep in the forward sections of the ship, areas that may hold mailbags, cargo crates, and other sealed rooms are buried under collapsed decks or lie in places too unstable to reach. High-resolution scans have shown sealed doors still intact after more than a century, doors that may hide trunks of possessions. financial ledgers, maybe even lost works of art. We know from surviving records that a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, bound in gold and encrusted with jewels, was on board, along with paintings, luxury goods, and crates marked for wealthy buyers in New York. None of these have ever been recovered. Then there are the rumors. Over the years, stories have circulated about secret cargo aboard the Titanic, unregistered shipments whose contents were never disclosed publicly. Some claim these could have been diplomatic documents, corporate secrets, or even experimental technology being transported across the Atlantic. If any of that is true, it would almost certainly have been stored in secure compartments, now lying silent at the bottom of the ocean. The idea of unlocking those rooms and finding something history never expected has fueled endless speculation. But time is running out. Scientists warn that the Titanic is deteriorating rapidly, eaten away by rust-eating bacteria and collapsing under its own weight. Areas once accessible are now sealed off by debris. If the strong rooms are ever going to be opened, it may have to happen soon before they're buried forever under the wreckage. Each year, expeditions capture new images of crumbling walls and twisting corridors, the ship slowly disappearing into the mud. Somewhere in those shadows, behind doors that haven't moved since 1912, may lie objects that could rewrite parts of the Titanic's story or raise even more questions about what else went down with the ship that night. As we've journeyed through the lifeboats that vanished without a trace, the unexplained damage beyond the iceberg, the strange objects scattered across the ocean floor, the alien-like life forms thriving in the dark, the missing sections of the Titanic itself, and the sealed rooms that may still hold untold treasures, one thing becomes clear: the Titanic is far more than a shipwreck frozen in time. It is a mystery layered upon mystery, a puzzle spread across 2.5 miles of black water and broken steel, guarded by the crushing pressure of the deep and the passage of more than a century. Every expedition brings new discoveries, but each answer seems to raise more questions. Why were parts of the ship missing entirely? What secrets lie inside the rooms no one has opened? Could clues about the ship's final moments still be hidden among the wreckage, waiting for someone to unlock them? Or will the ocean claim it all before we truly understand what happened on that cold April night? The Titanic is slipping away, dissolving slowly under the relentless work of time, nature, and bacteria that eat through its very bones. In another 100 years, there may be nothing left but photographs, artifacts in museums, and the stories we tell about what might still be down there. Yet as long as parts of it remain, as long as sealed doors stay locked and uncharted corners wait in darkness, the Titanic will continue to hold its secrets close, daring us to keep searching, to keep wondering what else lies hidden at the bottom of the Atlantic, waiting to be found.